Connected. It was unconnected.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Okay,
so we're
good.
live again. 1 minute away. Ideally, I like to be 10 minutes away, but to kind of give people notification that we're live. But it is what it is, and so we have a couple of minutes before we're gonna start um, our broadcast at 6 with judicial candidate, Pasco judicial candidate Joe Justice.
Yes.
And this is a million times better.
Well, I was like, what could be happening? It was cable that I had unplugged. I have a ton of cables all over the place. So not 6 yet. There's one person following. Good evening, Haiti Oropesa with Florida You Judge, along with my co-host Nina Hayden, who I'm happy you're joining me again tonight.
Yes.
We're gonna have back-to-back judicial candidates. One from Pasco County, starting now at 6. Joe Justice. He's running for county court, and what a great name to have to run a judicial race, huh?
Yeah, I mean, and I always tell people I just didn't have anything at all to do with it.
You didn't. Okay, so listen, it's 6 o'clock. We've started. Go ahead and share. Voting is important. The date to vote is it August 18th?
August 18th, which was my grandfather's birthday, so I'm hoping that's a good omen.
Oh, good. Yes,
Wow.
yes. So it's important, voters, to pay attention to these races. These are very important races, right, Nina? Judges,
You know
very
it.
important race. Tell us
Very
about your name.
important.
Tell us about your name. How did you get your name?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
We
wrote
know.
it down on a piece of paper.
Huh?
Yes.
You
My
said
mom
there
told
was
me I looked like a Joe.
what?
My mom told me I looked like a Joe. So,
Okay, no, but Justice, that's the one that I want. I wish my mom, I would have been called Haiti Justice.
yeah,
Do you
that
have?
comes from my father's side. I actually had to write a paper about like where our name came from in high school, and our
Okay.
best guess is it's from immigration. That somebody in our family was involved in either law enforcement or something legal, and they just stuck the name Justice on the end of it.
That's a cool name to
That's
have.
really interesting. Do
Yeah.
you have any other family members that are lawyers, judges?
In my immediate family, none. I am the we fix cars for a living. I'm the one kid
Wow.
who didn't fix cars. Instead, they sent me to school.
Nice. Nice. So
Wow.
tell us a little bit about your background, your career, your legal
Yeah.
career.
Sure. I graduated from the University of Florida's Levin College of Law in 2006. I took a job out of law school at a large law firm. It wasn't my favorite experience. I then took a job at the state attorney's office after a friend's dad said, "Hey, you might like this a little better." Went and did an interview. They offered me a job. I got popped into county court like everybody does when they start there, and I just fell in love with being in the courtroom. So ever since then, I've been telling people at some point I'm going to run to be a county court judge because I just love the experience so much. I did a stint at the state attorney's office in the Sixth Circuit. I went out and on my own, ran my own law firm for a while, and I'm now back at the state attorney's office, and that's related to our family. My wife is also an attorney. She works at Banker Lopez Gassler in downtown Tampa. She is the head of the products liability section, and when she became a partner, because she travels about 50% of the time, it made
Oh,
sense
wow.
for us to have a job that was much more stable for the kids. So I went back to working for the states because it's a more consistent schedule. And I
So
also love that job. It's
w-
so
w-
much fun.
how long were you a state attorney?
This is my second stint. It's overall combined, it's about 7 years. The first stint was a little over 3.
What do you like
Okay.
about being a prosecutor?
Everything. I mean, I just love being in the courtroom. You never know what's going to happen the day. There's that excitement of like you walk into court and you just don't know exactly what's going to happen. I absolutely love trying cases. This COVID thing's killing me because my joy in life is, getting to try stuff. I love just throwing the chips on the table and seeing what happens, especially in county court where that was really the only way to resolve some cases. You're like, some stuff just needs tried. Let the people have their say.
Right.
Mhm,
What do you think about
mhm.
Zooming, and the
Zoom is great in a lot of ways, though. The cynic in me is certain that Westlaw is very upset that they haven't found a way to make money off of it yet. So I expect in like a year there'll be a proprietary legal system to do stuff that you'll have to pay a monthly subscription fee for. I love a lot of it. It's really added to doing depots through it has been great. Doing some of the chambers hearings are great. I have a judge that's very into it, so he is eager to pop on Zoom. So if you message him and say, "Hey, I just talked to this defense attorney. We've reached out a plea agreement for this," he'll just give you a time and be like, you can just pop in and he'll resolve your case, which that kind of
Wow.
access I think is fantastic. I could see that being a big benefit to us in the
yeah,
future.
I love Zoom.
Yeah,
Let me ask you this
but I don't see how we're ever going to do a trial on it.
Yeah.
You know what? Miami just did a civil trial, I think.
Yeah, I saw that. I haven't read all the stories about it, but in criminal, it's going to be so hard for a juror to not just accidentally answer a text message or something while they're watching it and not even realize they've just caused a mistrial by sheer natural response.
That's a good point.
Yeah, listen,
It's
I
a really
think
good
that
point.
Zoom could be used for a lot, but minus a trial. I'd rather be in court when there's a trial. But
Yeah, and that's the other thing. There's a feel to a trial, like you got to get I don't think it's going to translate through a video when, sometimes you're going to win because the jury has just reacted to the genuineness of somebody's testimony. Like you're just like, wow, that was really something. Like you can feel it in the air. That's not going to happen on TV.
right,
Yeah.
I agree with that. But what do you think about Zooming in situations where it's not a trial?
I'm all for wherever we can add it. I think it's good. I think it's worked really well. I can't believe I never heard the word Zoom a couple months ago, and now it's like daily life. But no, I'd be all for continuing on with more Zoom hearings in the future.
That's awesome. Okay, so go, Nina.
So let's go back to law school. When you were in law school, and then did you always have aspirations, even in law school, wanting to be either a prosecutor or a judge? Did you have that in you?
Oh, my wife's going to yell at me because I'm going to want to answer this honestly. When I was like 5 or 6, my grandmother told me, you're going to be a lawyer. But she was like a Sicilian off the boat Italian. So she said avocado or something.
Oh,
not
avocado.
avocado. Yeah, I had to look up how to spell it. She's like, you're going to be a lawyer. So I'm like, okay, cool. Life is set. All my life, you asked me what I was going to do. I'd say, I'm going to be a lawyer. And I went to college with that idea. I got a history degree because I knew I was going to law school and I was going to be a lawyer. I got to law school. I don't know if you guys had this experience, but you get there and you're like, wow, this is not the most fun thing I've ever done. So if you had asked me, like law school me, I would have said I would like to find myself a high-paying job at a large law firm, and that would have been my answer.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you know what, Nina? I'm gonna go ahead and mute myself off because I'm gonna get the link off of the Florida U Judge page to put it embedded on my wall.
Okay. So that's really funny. I think a lot of law students kind of have that feeling like, oh my goodness, this is not what I expected. But so how did you transition then? Yeah. How did you transition from that to then you're actually practicing where you said, wow, this is in my blood? Like you kind of.
It was that experience of getting stuck in county court when they hired me at the state, because I walked in on the first day. I got introduced to a person that's still a good friend of mine today, named Joe. Joe hands me a phone, here you have a trial. And I'm like, I have a trial? He's like, yes, you have a trial. I will help you a little. And I go down there, and the next thing I know, I have to pick a jury with no idea what I'm doing. Somebody give me a binder with sample questions. I'm up there following my way through. I mean, it was something else. But they stuck me in front of a judge that had been on the bench for like 30 years.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, after 6 months in there, I learned so much in that courtroom. Like, I mean, it just changed my entire trajectory as a lawyer. And a lot of it is credit to just being in front of such an experienced judge.
Tell me if you had experiences being in front of a judge that's not that experienced, and how do you respond to that?
Well, I don't want to get myself in trouble there. I've had experiences where you have the, a senior judge or a guest judge or a judge covering that obviously doesn't do your type of law. And that can be rough where you're like, the judge is like, well, let's do this. And you're like, well, legally we can't. Like, we have to do it this way or that way or, things like that. But usually those judges are fantastic because they know that they don't know and they're just doing that. But I haven't really had a lot of practice in front of most of my career has been in front of judges with, that were excellent.
Let's stay on that point. You answered. It was a good fair answer. How do you feel when like there's an attorney that is trying to maybe tell you, look, this is how it is, or this is how the law is? How should the response from judges be? Because I see sometimes judges just they think that they're right, and sometimes it's almost like they don't even want to hear you argue.
I certainly would hope that wouldn't be my experience with it. I mean, I've seen people.
No, I'm talking about if you're a judge.
Yeah, I don't think I would ever cut off somebody's argument. I mean, if somebody's obviously like just way off base, I can think of a case I had years ago where somebody tried to represent a family member, and he was in admiralty law in New York, and he just had no idea what he was doing. And I was actually over there trying to help. Like, hey, you can't do these things. And, I'm sure that was very frustrating for the judge who kept having to try to sort of indulge him. I remember at some point he wanted the hearing so bad that I just brought my witnesses and said, I don't think he's properly filed for the hearing, but sooner or later he'll figure out how to do it. And I'd rather skip that step and just do whatever it is he wants to do today. So.
Mm-hmm. I was just looking on your website, and you had talked about some of the areas that you've practiced in. Can you let us know?
Oh, it's pretty much everything that walked in my door when I was in private practice. So obviously I've been a prosecutor. I've done
Right.
criminal defense. I did family law. I've done insurance defense. I've done homeowners insurance disputes from the plaintiff's side. I've done assignment of benefits cases, which are usually closely connected to that. I've done small claims cases. I sued once over a dog.
Wow.
I've done traffic tickets. I've done a
You've
lemon
done
law.
everything.
You walked in my door. I did my best to help people. I've done probate. I've done.
That's it. Just vote for him.
No, this is good
I
to
don't think
know.
I've never heard a
Honestly,
candidate that
Attorney-
has done
Attorney
everything
Justice, this
you've
is to
done.
know. That's why I'm asking.
Seriously,
Right,
you're
right.
well-rounded for sure.
Because you could definitely be put. I mean, you don't necessarily get to choose, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Haiti, but I still believe you've got some judges there that are the ones that decide where you go in your circuit, like which particular division you'll be assigned to. So you may not get assigned to criminal. You may get assigned to
Right. Yeah, that's true. It's
Yeah.
it's the chief judge that makes the assignments, right, Joe? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
that's correct. And we would assume that this one will probably start as a civil seat.
Yeah.
Okay,
So-
so is that what you want? Or because listen, what I'm hearing, you're ready to hit whichever area where you're assigned to.
So yeah, it's going to be either the current seat is in Newport Richie. It's Judge Fermani's seat, and he does a civil docket primarily landlord tenant.
Oh, Judge
I
Romani.
know.
Oh, we've
I
all
like him.
practiced in front of him. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's great. And when you talk with him, he's got a great story. He came over here because his dad was going to coach the Rowdies soccer team. He's growing off to be a farmer, which is kind of fun.
I think he's always had interest in that farming or land. Yeah.
So
Wow.
Divinity Love wants to say hello, Divinity Love. Thanks for tuning in.
Yes.
Tell
Yes,
others,
hello.
your friends, family, please share on your social media platforms. This is important, especially if you're voting in Pasco. Have people that you know that are voting in Pasco. This is important. It's the very least that we can do is take some time to vet candidates
That's true.
in the
That's right.
upcoming election. Because it's a little annoying when you hear people complain and then they don't vote, or people that don't encourage people to vote or say, it's not worth it, or it's a waste of time. Voting is very important.
Right.
People have died for that, for us to have the right to be able to do that. Today I was talking to my mom about Cuba. We were talking about, she left in 1960. 66, I think she left. 64. She's here in the background saying 64. So she left in 1964. Look, the same regime has been in power for 60 years. Could you imagine that, huh? So we have this amazing
Wow.
ability to vote in judges and tell the public, Joe, and how important it is, the rule that if you're elected, you're going to be entrusted with.
I mean, it's county court is a wonderful place because it is the place where you're most likely to interact with the voters. Regular people find themselves in court for a number of reasons, but the primary place that they might find themselves ending up is county court, because say you have a small claims dispute, a small lawsuit, a misdemeanor, a traffic ticket is probably the highest volume of anything you could possibly
That's
show.
true. That's
And
true.
it's really the only level where you can show up with a lawyer and talk to the judge and it not be a terrible idea. At circuit court, you probably should get yourself a lawyer. You're in for it.
No,
in
but
county-
you know what? Even with tickets, sometimes people think like when they go and they pay driving while license is suspended without knowledge, that affects them. They could get a 5-year revocation, right? So even that, sometimes people, that's just a ticket. It's not really important. But sometimes, even in those cases, it can have an impact on their license and
and
points that could lead to a suspension.
For sure.
So
And there are
it's
big
important.
benefits to going to the county court if you get a traffic ticket, especially because most of the county court judges I've been in front of for traffic understand that certain people are there for the sole reason that they're worried about their insurance. And
Right.
all of
Yeah.
those judges will call those people in the beginning and say, if you're just worried about your insurance, I will make sure that you get a withhold. You don't get any points. You're just going to have to go and pay your fine. And that's usually clears out a huge chunk of the courtroom. There's also
So-
the exception that if they send you to traffic school, it doesn't count against your lifetime number. You know how you can only go to traffic school a couple times? If a county court judge sends
right,
you,
once a
it doesn't
year,
count.
3 times, once a year, 5 times, I think it is in your lifetime.
And that sounds
Were you
correct.
elected?
Yeah, but if a judge sends you, it's
It
unlimited.
doesn't count. Right.
Mhm.
It doesn't count towards your options. So somebody wants to say hello. I don't know if you're seeing this or is giving you props. Chris Parker. Joe is a great guy.
Well, thanks,
Chris
Chris.
Parker.
He's a great guy. Adorable baby he has. Him and his wife. A beautiful baby boy. So he wanted to come in. I wanted to have some engagement with the public. There's people.
2
that
kids,
have,
I think you have. I saw, right?
Oh, that two. Yes. Yeah. Is that correct? He's. She. His
I think it's
wife.
one on the
they're
way.
having another one. Another one's on the way. Right. So
Yeah.
Joe, why do you want to be a judge?
Like I said, it was really that experience in county court where I was just fell in love with it. I used to tell people then, like right there, that one of these days I'm going to run to be a county court judge. Like this is what I want to do. And you guys asked me the question earlier about getting assigned to a particular
Right.
position.
Right.
And,
Where would you rather
you know,
be?
I'd happily be anywhere because obviously it's the gig I'm chasing. But at some point, I would hope I get to be on the criminal bench, and that really has to do with the people that are in front of you. The reason I loved it is because of the judge that helped teach me. And in my office, I'm known as the guy that teaches the new people. Like every time we get a new attorney, they have their first trial with me because I grab them and drag them down to court because I think they should sort of have that same experience of if you're going to be in this office, you need to be a trial attorney, right? Like that's what really makes you. So every person that's in our office, that any young lawyer has had their first trial with me. So it's kind of that same gist that I want to be there with the young lawyers where I have a chance to, make a difference influencing, how they become as lawyers. Because most of the people that come out of the state attorneys in the public defender's office have a different approach to ethics and candor and personality because it's a small group and they have to treat each other nicely. You don't get those crazy discovery disputes and all that kind of infighting that you see in some of the other stuff because they just can't afford to have relationships like that and be functional.
Right.
So my hope is to shape young people.
So let me ask you this question because I'm asking you in the eyes of a potential defendant that could come into your courtroom. What type of demeanor are they going to get from you? How do you see yourself in terms of the way that you will manage the courtroom?
With the defendant, they're certainly going to think that I'm going to be fair and impartial to them because I will be. I'm going to approach it from that angle. And remember, I've done both criminal defense and criminal prosecution, so I'm not really skewed in one direction or another. As a prosecutor, it's easy to interject my prosecutorial philosophy, but honestly, you have to step back from that and let those people all do their jobs from their roles in the courtroom and, just call balls and strikes when it's required. So that'll be an adjustment for me. I can tell you that my prosecutorial philosophy is one of moving cases. So I expect to take that with me, and kind of an aggressive approach to making sure the cases get moved because county court cases do not age like wine. Like they get worse with age. So I would hope that the case is moving along efficiently and that you would have clear expectations from the front of, when we're going to do these things, when I expect this case concluded by, when you're going to have a pretrial, when you're going to have a trial date, things like that. Obviously, every case needs to be treated individually, and I'm going to do that.
Right.
But we want people to have a clear understanding and expectation because as a lawyer, my best friend is a consistent judge where I can tell my client exactly what I expect to see happen. There's room for deviation, but this is when they sit down and get advice from you, it's good when you can tell them with this particular judge, you can expect this, this, and this. So I hope to be that.
What has been your community involvement, if any? And tell us what your thoughts are as to community involvement.
And community, being a member of the community as a judge is important. You've got to be somebody that they see as part of the fabric of it because you're just some outsider. It's a whole different story. And I actually sat through the last night we did the East Pasco Bar Association's judicial interviews, and you can see there's some real discord in that particular community in that all of the circuit judges that keep getting appointed to Dade City are always eager to leave. And they're sort of tired of not having people that are part of their community sitting on those seats. And it obviously doesn't affect us because we're county, but half that meeting was about people trying to vet out whether or not the circuit candidates would actually stay in Dade City or seek to flee right away. That's
actually a really good point. Dade City is kind of off the beaten path a little bit. It's nice out there. I've been there. It's a nice place. It's actually really pretty. Yeah, it's nice. So you'll be in Newport Richey. Is that what you said?
I don't know. It's Newport Richey or Dade City, and I'd happily go to.
Or Dade City.
I'm a Florida native. I was born not far from Dade City. So I would happily go to Dade City because I sort of fit that old Florida mold, but I also practiced in Newport Richey for a long period of time. So I'm good in either location.
Yeah. Have you done anything other than practicing or legal in the community around you? Have been involved in anything?
As far as local stuff, I did teen court,
Yeah.
obviously, because it's one of the few things that you can do as a prosecutor. Because pro bono work is a little rough. When I was in private practice, I did a lot of pro bono work, and it was primarily because I was on the Florida Bar's legal referral service committee, and I would take on cases off that. Obviously, you agree to do a minimal consultation. I never charged for those. But here and there, people's cases were compelling. I always tell people the very first not guilty verdict I ever got, I did not get paid for. The kid walked in and told me a story that I thought, there's no way this is the facts. I looked into the case and those were the facts. And I was like, I'm going to step in and see what I can do for you. And we ended up going to trial. It was about a 2-minute not guilty verdict. But
wow.
Yeah, that was something
private practice?
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. Very nice.
Yeah, but that was, I was compelled, obviously for me, it's an altruistic story and that I took it pro bono, but I also knew I had a really good case and I was looking to, I wanted to try that case and get that experience from that end. It was
altruistic and honest and modest.
Yeah. So I did that. I used to be on the Florida Bar's Consumer Protection Committee. I had a passion for consumer protection in law school. I actually did part of some of the, they produce all these forms and pamphlets for people that they can read about the judicial system. I participated in some of the drafting of that. I'm a member of my Rotary Club. I volunteered with kids sports teams, but that's primarily because my kids were on them.
That's good.
So, I try to be engaged.
So let me tell you, how involved do you see your community in the judicial races? Do you find that you have to inform yourself? What are you doing to kind of get yourself out there or get known in the community? I think one of the biggest issues when it comes to judicial races is, how do people know? As they see the names on there, they're like, well, what's the difference between, you and anyone else running in your group? So what are you doing? How are you getting out there besides this interview?
Let's throw out a giant caveat that there's a global pandemic that has sort of ruined every basic idea for campaigning. When it started, all we did was plan events and try to set up meet and greets or, where can we go? We had a full schedule of stuff in March where I was probably doing something every single day. And then it turned into a full slot of X's. We tried to do online stuff. We've done a couple of Zoom style meet and greets. We have done, I've done email and social media work. We're doing that stuff to try to get out there. But honestly, you're very limited because of the COVID issue.
Yeah.
What makes you qualified? Other than everything that you've done, like what are your strongest points as a candidate in comparison to your opponent?
Okay, well, my strongest point as a comparison is experience, because we can objectively say I have significantly more experience. I've been a lawyer for significantly longer. I've handled significantly more cases. I've handled significantly more serious cases. I have handled more hearings. I have handled more trials by a lot. I'm the only one that's had any experience not working for the government. So I'm the only one that's ever been in private practice. I'm the only person that's represented people on both sides of the bench. I am the only person with over a decade of legal experience. The other things that I would put into it, because lawyers love to just talk about their trial stats and sort of regular people. Somebody early on, I said, well, I have over 50 jury trials. I was like, is that a lot? Does that matter? I don't know if that's important. I was like, okay, yes, the prosecutor in you gets lost in these stats when people really don't care. For lawyers and stuff, I think I have the advantage of having run my own business. And you guys know that there's a lot more that goes on outside the courtroom that I think judges should have some experience with: the experience of billing, the experience of client control, the experience of trying to schedule appearances in multiple courtrooms. You want a judge that actually understands that, because it's difficult when you're there and you get stuck in a court with a judge that doesn't understand that, and you spend 6 hours waiting for your case to get called on a huge pretrial docket, and you're thinking about all the other stuff you need to do and all that. And, having represented clients, you get the experience of, a totally different experience that I think is helpful to bring to the bench.
You know what, though? But now that you mentioned that, even though you seem to be able to understand that and say you understand that, but I've seen judges who I won't name that were had solo practices, were hustling just as hard as I am, and once they get on the bench, they don't seem to understand, and it's very annoying.
I see that. Obviously, this is one of those things where it's very easy to. I always say you're a better lawyer from the back of the courtroom than the front of it. So it's easy to sit in the back row and watch somebody's trial and think, well, I wouldn't have done that, or I wouldn't have done this. And I hope, to goodness gracious sake, that if I actually get elected, I don't look back at this seeing me talk about what that's like and realize that I had no idea what I was talking about. I'm hoping to bring all of that with me to the bench. And I'm sure there's realities to the job that I just don't know or understand yet. So I hope to be open-minded to all that. But I do think I will respect people's time as best as possible. One thing I can guarantee is that I would anticipate that I will start court at whatever time I say I'm starting court. There's nothing that drives me crazier than spending a prolonged period of time sitting in the courtroom waiting for it to start. So I expect to be prompt.
Well, you know what? That's why I was talking about earlier, Zoom, using it when there's not a trial, so that you're saving gas, time. And I'm talking about the attorneys. I mean, I don't know. We've been revolutionized because of a pandemic, because of the ability to use Zoom, and I hope we use it as much as we can, short of using it for trials.
Yeah, hopefully they'll give us the discretion to do that, because right now I think we're all functioning under those emergency orders, and I don't know that they're going to allow that to continue. I'm sure there's some recording and privacy issues related to it. There's probably a lot to sort out, but it's another tool in the toolbox, and I'd be happy to continue to be able to use it.
Divinity Love says, how long have you been practicing? She has two questions, actually. That's the first. And I think, you already mentioned how long you've been practicing?
14 years, roughly. 14 years. It'll be 14 years.
And her second question is, curious, what will you do differently from others on the bench? I
don't know that I can answer that one easily, because I tried to count it the other day, and I think I've been in front of about 50 judges. The courtroom was as far away as Jacksonville as to Fort Myers. My wife laughs at that because she's been in like Alaska, so she's covered way more, and she thinks it's funny that I don't know about different, because that's a whole bunch of different.
Okay, so let me do it this.
I got a question.
And then I'll do, yeah, of course. I'm going to go after you with Divinity Loves.
Let me ask a question. Oftentimes we have been in court and we've done trials. So this is a question about a trial. And there's judges that seem more interested in the trial and not. I'm going to pose a couple scenarios. One, the judge is not really paying attention that much in trial and it seems a little distracted. And then when you're arguing over something, maybe an objection or something, the judge doesn't seem that invested. Or two, the judge, maybe let's say the trial's on a Friday, the judge wants to go home, and it seems as though the judge is really rushing things, and the motive of the judge is to get this thing over quickly so I can leave.
And that's horrible when that happens. You said it right now, and that happened to me last year. It's a bad situation.
Okay, I'm talking about some real life situations of myself as well. So, and that can be a little frustrating. I'm another question to ask you, but I'll wait and do that after Haiti. What type of judge are you going to be? Now, I know right now. I just want to talk to you about that. Yeah.
I don't know that I completely followed the question. I heard about disinterested, but I don't know about what type.
Yeah. She said like. And
distracted or just.
I know what Nina's saying. It's happened to me, and it's almost like, are you paying attention to me with what I said? This is important. This is my client. I'm prepared. Right. I'm giving you information. Your mind seems to be somewhere else, and not only that, but you want to rush this along, and this is important.
Correct.
I've experienced that.
So
it's very annoying.
Yeah.
It is.
It's infuriating because it's like, this is important to my client. My client's going to get impacted, and I did it on a case that was very serious. So those are realities that happen, and
I just want you to comment on that in terms of what type of judge that you will be, and in a sense, this does hold you to a commitment, right? So you're saying it. So
I've walked into a courtroom after spending a ton of time preparing for something, and then just gotten sort of brushed off on it. It's not. I didn't enjoy that. I expect, like I said, I love trials. I'm just sort of a junkie for the trial experience. So I anticipate that I will be on the edge of my seat trying to see what happens, because I love watching the witnesses and love watching the jurors and trying to figure out what impacted them. So I expect that I will be paying attention. Obviously, I'm still actively trying cases, so evidentiary-wise, I should be, up on the objections as best as one can be. So I expect that I would be engaged. I give people the spiel that the way I was taught to practice law is 3 Ps, which is be prompt, prepared, and professional at all times. And I'm going to take that with me to the bench. So the prepared part is, if somebody submitted something before court, then you've sat down and read it, no matter how much time it took you. If it's professionalism. It's that you're going to give everybody the knowledge that you're listening to everything they're saying, that you're paying attention, that you're giving them the time that they deserve for the hearing. So as I sit here today, I would make those promises to the people that appear before me that I'm going to consistently be that way.
Good. Okay. I've also had, Haiti, you there? Looks like
I
she's.
am. You
okay,
can't
great.
see me?
And you were kind of real still, so I couldn't tell if your screen froze or not.
No.
So what about if there is an issue that's brought up, a legal issue that the attorneys are arguing, and it hasn't been given to you beforehand? Okay. How are you going to address that, either in a motion scenario or let's say a trial scenario? How would you address that?
In a motion scenario, I can tell you that I'm going to just take my time and get it right then. If this is something that comes up in this hearing, I'm going to tell you that I'm going to reserve. I'm going to go and read your stuff. If it's something where I might have to give you an opportunity to brief the court. I mean, this is county, so you don't expect it to get too complicated, but
right.
I provide people an additional opportunity to brief the court if needed. The judge I'm in front of now always does that. And here and there, it's really helped when you think an issue got muddled during the hearing and it needs clarified. And reserve ruling and, issue a well thought out order later, as opposed to just trying to rule on it right then and there. For a trial scenario, obviously your feet are to the fire that you've got to make a call on certain things. So there, I'm just going to hope that, relying on my prior experience, I'm going to be able to make the right call, because I just have so much experience in the courtroom trying the cases. And, the law isn't super complicated at the county level. Odds are you're handling something like a battery or a DUI. And while there can be complicated issues in there, the case law isn't super broad where it would, hold you up for a prolonged period of time with a novel issue. Most novel issue I ever tried in a case is I recently came back I got a case that went to the DCA over contracting without a license, because when we finished the trial, everybody always said that the remedy in contracting is disgorgement, meaning all the money goes back. Guess what's not in the actual statute? That right. It ended up packaged with a group of appeals. They sent it to the DCA, and the DCA sent us back a letter saying, after careful review, we've decided not to answer your question.
Oh, wow.
The circuit court. And then I finally got a ruling that favored my interpretation, but that took forever.
Oh, wow.
It's weird when both lawyers and the judge are all sitting there with books in their hands in the middle of a quiet courtroom trying to figure out what to do.
Exactly.
Well, we can't always know everything, so we just can't. There's new laws that are being created, new case law, so
there's a chunk of
keep up to speed.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
Through it.
This is a good question, I think. I'm going to go ahead and discuss this. Sometimes people ask, geez, if I go to trial in front of that judge, what's going to happen if I lose?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever heard of that? Have you ever been concerned? Okay.
Represent people. I remember there were certain judges that you could tell the client, like, there is literally no way you are going home at the end of this trial if you are found guilty. I've had that experience. And I've had the experience of the opposite, a judge that I absolutely can guarantee that you are not getting anything other than this sentence, because that's what you're going to get from this judge. I've been in front of one judge that's very consistent about his sentences after trial are exactly these things. I've been in front of another judge that was always on the other end. And, I'd like to say that there's no way I can give you a prediction, as I'm going to be listening to it the first time. And I'm probably going to make a call based on that. Obviously, nobody's ever getting punished for exercising their constitutional right to a trial, but my interpretation versus everybody else's is going to be interesting. Probably the only time that I'll actually, get involved in sentencing directly, because I also believe in not meddling in that for the most part. I've always been frustrated by judges that come and meddle with your agreements, because as the prosecutor, sometimes I'm making a deal because I have information about the case that you don't have on the bench. And if you don't trust me to make the right decision, it can go, it can get bad pretty fast. So I expect to, honor most people's agreements, things like that.
Hey, we're going to talk about ESAS, or what do you want to talk about?
We could talk about ESAS. I don't know if you happened to catch yesterday's broadcast, Joe, on the equitable sentencing analysis system.
I do not any knowledge. I was busy prepping for that East Pasco Bar Association thing.
Not a problem. But anyways, it's an amazing software that and I don't know that that's going to be applicable to you. In fact, it's not, because it doesn't
It'd be
do the
nice to have
comparison
this,
in county.
right?
Oh yeah, it would be. It would be
Nice
nice
to,
to do that. I've asked about that, but
yeah.
it's just so that's not really something that I don't.
Like
You're not
an
gonna
update on the
probably have
score sheet
interest in.
It could potentially, because you never know if Attorney Justice, I should say, becomes Judge Justice and then eventually goes to the circuit court. It would be something that he could see.
Worry about getting one robe first before another.
Let me
Yeah.
ask this. I'll ask this. Why do some judges seem to resist a motion to disqualify them?
I honestly don't know, because frankly, the standard for the initial one is low, and honestly, if you're almost generating a problem for yourself if you choose not to follow it. I mean, unless it's untimely. Like I had a case once where the guy was obviously sitting on the motion to disqualify. The grounds for it were from like 6 months prior. You could actually see in the corner the draft date on the thing was the day after. So he'd actually been sitting on the thing for 6 months and filed it right before court. Right before trial. In that situation, you're like, that's obviously not a timely motion, and it's being used for strategy. So I could see resisting it there. But if it's, a timely raised one, I mean, you're just moving what's a potential problem to you're circumventing a potential appellate problem by just.
Let me ask you this. I'll say this. That granting a disqualification motion is not a bad thing. It's not admitting that you're being unfair. But if
No, not at all.
someone, right? So
The standard
if
is the person asked at the initial phase.
right, but shouldn't some judges I think sometimes some judges are just offended. Like, how dare you suggest that I can't be fair? Listen, in some cases maybe we can't be fair, and to admit that is a good thing, right?
There's
Or even if you think you could be fair, isn't it important to have someone feel completely like, you know what, I have some uncertainty here because of whatever, and to just disqualify yourself, to give them increased confidence and assurance that they're going to get the fairest hearing possible.
I really don't think there's any place in our system for the lawyers or the judges to take things personally. Like, you just can't. You got to have a thick skin. You can't take it personally when people, some people I see get upset when somebody files a motion, and you're like, well, that's their job. You can't take it personally. If you start taking things personally, you're in for it. So same thing as if I issued a ruling that got appealed. That's up to somebody above me to make a call on. I made the call I thought was right at the time, but you're not going to take it personally if it goes the other way. I've never taken it personally when I've lost a motion or lost a trial. I've had a couple trials that stuck with me where I was really upset about the verdict and that I felt bad for a party. But I've never taken it personally that I didn't win it.
But we do sometimes get upset. I get upset sometimes. I do.
I'm
when it
pretty
doesn't
low
go my
key.
way and I think it should go a certain way, and a judge doesn't rule in my way, I get upset sometimes. But
I'm not.
I could definitely see you getting disappointed. Right.
Yeah. I can see that in you. You clearly. I was like,
just in me, just in
not
me.
Haiti. But here's the reason why I asked that question, Haiti, about equitable sentencing, because here's what I'm getting to, Attorney Justice, is even in misdemeanor court, when you're looking at sentencing structures, are you someone, because you did make a comment about, well, I'm going to let the prosecutor, if the prosecutor, you said in the defense has come up with agreed upon disposition, you don't really necessarily want to get involved with that. Now, that is a philosophy, because there's some judges that doesn't matter what they come up with, they still want to get involved in the process. Are you going to be cognizant to see if there is a situation where you see that there is an inequity in sentencing? In other words, someone came in with the same situation in a similar fact pattern, same situation, but you see that there was a higher sentence as opposed to one that was a lower. And is there a disparity in terms of treatment? That's really what I'm getting at in terms of what you will be, how involved will you be in the sentencing process in that regard. I'm not asking you to be the attorneys, but you are managing the courtroom and you are managing the justice and fairness that happens in your courtroom. So that's what I want to hear you talk about.
And that's a good question. And just to tie this in lastly, so because again, I want to encourage engagement, please, public, this is an opportunity, great opportunity for those of you, particularly in Pasco, those of you who have people that you know that are going to be voting in this upcoming Pasco election. This is very important. Okay, judges make decisions that impact the lives of the people that come before them. So very important. Joe Justice, who's running for a county seat in Pasco County, please write in your comments, questions. Divinity Love said yes. Will he utilize the software if given the opportunity? Nina, I'm glad that you didn't give up on that question, even though it's not. He's probably not going to familiarize himself at this point, since there's
I just
nothing.
can't answer
There's
that.
nothing. Right. There's nothing that could be used in misdemeanor. But however, it's still. I think it's a fair question to ask you. What are your thoughts about this idea to trying to have software, something that can be used to try to gauge, to make sure that there's
Fairness in
equity.
sentencing, right?
Exactly.
I mean, that sounds like exactly what we're after in the court system is fairness in sentencing. I always feel like as a prosecutor, I've had a model career of fairness in sentencing. I have my public defenders that I work with, who all of whom tend to endorse me. My endorsement list is filled with opposing counsel, and it's because I'm pretty crystal clear about how I'm going to be on sentencing. I have a philosophy in prosecuting that I generally break down as a 10-80-10 approach. And I tell them that I think about 10% of my cases are genuine accidents, like mistakes, people we're never going to see again, people that just need diversion. 80% of our people are sort of stuck in that cycle of like drug addiction or just, the endless cycle. And for those people, that's, for me, the score sheet pretty much speaks to it. I generally tell them that I'm going to be fairly close to whatever the score sheet is on that. If we're in the discretionary range, you're probably looking at supervision. If we're in the DOC range, then you're probably going to be offered a sentence that's close to what they score. And then I have 10% of the people that I think are genuinely a problem, the people that are actually hurting people out there. And for those people, I spend most of my time pursuing the habitualization and stuff on that. And I don't see that as disparate. I think that's what the purpose of the prosecutor should be, is to focus on those people. And for the rest of the people, just find whatever's fair to resolve the case and move it along. I have always handled high volume that way. And my PDs are pretty good about knowing, they can contact me like, hey, I just met with this guy. I looked at it. I told you haven't sent me an offer, but I expect it to be something like this. And they're almost always very close to what I'm expecting in the case. And
No,
that's which is different.
I hear what you're saying. But yesterday, and you don't have the benefit of having tuned in and no, so I'm just going to try to nutshell it. But the idea behind this software that has been around now for a couple of years is that sometimes, unfortunately, not because anyone's inherently a bad person or has a particular bias, but sometimes we do have implicit bias. There's implicit bias testing, right? That's a point of discussion now with criminal justice reform. He touched upon that yesterday, A. Wellington Barlow, when he spoke about that. So I get what you're saying. So you already have like a framework that you're working from. Well, if it's this, then you're gonna get in this range, or if it's that, it's in that range. But what we're talking about is that sometimes implicit bias can happen. And if you had data that was generated that showed you all these people, even in county court with DUIs, people get jail time or battery or misdemeanor charges. There's no score sheet there. But if there was a way to generate information about everyone that's come before you, like let's say, let me pose a hypothetical, and I think this is the spirit and essence of what Nina's trying to inquire about, and the person that's writing in, Divinity Love, is asking. If all of a sudden, let's say, and I know the judicial canon number 7, we're not asking you to say anything, just kind of we want to have a discussion, an idea. So, and then it's a hypothetical. You have whatever criteria you have that you decide when both sides are presenting the prosecution, this is why you should give this, the defense mitigating no, and this is why you should give that. So you have to, in whatever calculator you have, to figure out, okay, this is what I think I'm going to do after hearing from everything. But let's say that the prosecution is saying, for this DUI, I want 180 days jail. And then the defense brings forth actual cases in your court for some from the time or even before that have been brought before that court, that the average is less than 6 months. With that similar when they're similarly situated.
So we're
That's
assuming not egregious facts, but they're essentially identical in this situation.
they're
Similarly
essential.
situated, right?
Yes,
Correct.
yes, and then let's say that the person in front of you, there's a different racial group than the ones that before the defendant before you have gotten better results, being similarly situated than the person who's appearing before you, who may be um, a minority, and you see that for yourself, like, wow, okay, all these
You,
people got a lot less. So that's
in,
the yeah.
yeah, in your hypothetical here, you're telling me there's hard data telling me that this is a
Yes,
proportionate
yes,
sentence compared to what I normally do. Then
that
I'm
is
going to
correct.
need a darn good explanation as to why that happened.
Okay, great.
Good. So my question is this, then let's say there's not hard data, but there's an approach that you suggested that you have. I like you said 10%, 80,
And that's
10, right?
obviously
Just,
circuit, like I said.
it's
There's
just,
not a lot of room for that in county, but
I understand. But what I'm want to get from you is in county, will you talking about fair? I'm getting more into the nuts and bolts of this because we know as judges, only so many kinds of questions we can ask you. So we're getting a little more in the nuts and bolts. As a judge, how do you manage fair sentencing? In other words, are you going to be cognitively aware of the type of cases that are coming before you, and in that understanding and remembering to the best of your knowledge, okay, that okay, maybe there's another case. This compares kind of to the other case, and I remember how I, sentenced that. In other words, is that something that is going to be in the forefront of your mind, and what type of approach do you think you'll take with that to the best of your ability? Okay, I know,
yeah.
without data, without having raw data, right?
Yeah, without that, like I said, I would expect to be a consistent sentencer.
Okay.
My best friend as an attorney is the consistent sentencing judge. There's nothing worse than telling your client, I don't know what's going to happen. That's not what they're paying you
I
for.
know, I
That's
So
know,
so
you,
true.
and that happens all the time. I'm like, I don't have a crystal ball.
That's so
yeah,
true. That is
I
so
don't
true.
guarantee you not come on a trial or something when I'm prepping you, but I can tell you, when you practice in these areas, like you have drawn this judge generally does that. So I expect that I would be in that framework. There should be expectations that, you can be able to tell your person, this is usually what happens. Now, mind you, like I said, the prosecutor stands up and says, this turns out to be the most egregious version of this I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
That's a case by case basis, but there's going to be, I assume, consistent baselines. Now, mind you, that does not mean I will have a rubric, because one of my least favorite things to happen to me as a prosecutor was prosecuting in front of a judge that had a strict rubric
Right,
that
right.
never deviate from. And that doesn't account for situations with the facts. That was my frustration before with judges getting involved in your sentencing. This person's like, well, this is a fifth time DWSR, and that equals 180 days or something. And you're like, yeah, but this is a DWSR on a Uber scooter or whatever. And you're like, I don't think the jury's going to like this. So I've got a lesser deal, and the judge is like, no, it's a fifth. All fifths are the same. And I'm like, but they're not. They're not all the same. So I will not have a rubric, but I expect to be consistent. If it's a first-time DUI, the first-time DUI sanctions are pretty well laid out there. I don't anticipate situations where, we're talking a normal non-crash situation, nobody's hurt, where you deviate from the standard sentencing, which have been, that's what I've offered on those things my entire life as a prosecutor. That's what I anticipate would be the sentence if you walked in on the case at any point before me.
Right.
Domestic cases are obviously a lot more complicated. It's hard to say what you would do there. People hate to read that statute because there is some mandatory jail time sprinkled in there that everybody tries to duck their way around. I recently had to explain to somebody that you can't ROR on a domestic, and it's ultra complicated. I mean, you could set a bond at some nominal amount, but you're not actually legally allowed to ROR, and they just couldn't believe me. And I had to dig through the statute, because it's one of those things where you have to go to this statute, to that statute, to that statute.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's, oh my word. Please, legislatures, do something about that.
Oh yeah, remember, I was so excited. I was like, they're gonna fix it. I was like, you guys left the bad part.
Yeah.
You didn't change anything.
Yeah.
So
Very good.
we have 12 minutes left. Talk. I always ask this, and it's very important to me, because I know, not me or Nina, but like the average person, when they go, people get so scared, even with tickets. They do. They're just so nervous. How important is that when they people come in, all types of people with all different types of problems, issues that we don't know. They're already nervous. They're having to go to court. How important is like demeanor that to you in
And
dealing with
demeanor
the
is
people that
big in county court. Obviously, I'm running for a county court spot. You've got to maintain the fact that it's an elected position. You can't just be up there rubbing people the wrong way all day. This is a chance to interact with people that may be the people that check the box next to your name in the future.
No, I
So,
know, but you know what, Joe? I've seen it. It's been done, and you sometimes you gotta have to bite your tongue,
mhm.
but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes judges act very not in accord with what in a manner that leaves a lot to desire.
Let me say this too. Actually helping some folks get to the judicial seat and then realizing they actually became a total different person than who they
Right.
were before they became a judge. It's almost, have you ever heard the term robitis?
I sure have.
Have you seen robitis?
Yeah, sure.
Have you diagnosed robitis?
Am I allowed to answer that question? Is that besmirching? I
I've
don't know
I've
that I'm
I've
allowed.
seen like whoa, before and after,
Well,
like
we won't
wow.
call it robitis, but we'll say
Well, it's
the
not
demeanor.
robitis. That once they give you the robe, you can't get anything wrong anymore. You're always right. That's how it happens. It's actually it's like part of
So
the
is
thing.
it robritis?
Oh,
There you go, robitis. I'm always right now.
robitis. Yeah.
Okay, so there's
Um,
10 minutes left. So send in your Joe's gonna be here another 10 minutes. Send in your questions to hopefully you'll be Judge Justice. What a cool name to be
it is
called
a
Judge
cool
What's
Justice.
funny though is I struggle with people that are like in the campaign. They're like, wait, that's your name? I thought that's just what you were running. Yeah, I
It's
get
true.
people
I can definitely see that.
or
I
Joe
can,
for justice. That's what I hear from
Has
people.
right.
anybody said, did you do that on purpose? Did you like
Yeah.
do a
Yeah,
name switcheroo right
it's
when you
like
decided like it was actually Joe Smith and you legally changed it to Justice?
yeah. So the first thing everybody asks you is what your political party is,
Right.
and then you get to disappoint them thoroughly. And the second question I get is that your real name? Did you make that up?
Right. So tell the viewers just why they should vote for you. We've got a few minutes left. Why should they vote for you? And yeah, that's it.
And early voting and ballots being out and all of that.
Yeah, you can still request an absentee. Those things are going out every single day. You have up until I believe the 8th here to request one. The early voting starts on the 8th, and then the actual election day is on the 18th. I'm an early voter, but it turns out that's the majority of people. Most people are either absentee or at the polls. Apparently, it's like 40, 40, 20, and I'm the weirdo in the 20. So as far as voting, there's a couple of things. There's from an experience perspective, I just, like I said, have a lot more experience. Next is I really do think I have a personality that comports itself well with the county court. It's more of a place where you get to talk to somebody, a place that, the interactions have to be higher volume, but they are more personable. And from a personal background, I was raised in a blue collar household. My family fixed cars. Like I grew up sweeping floors at a place, pushing brooms. When I got old enough to drive, it was driving customers back and forth to drop them off. Like I watched my parents build this business through sweat. So I'm never going to forget what it's like to be a regular guy. So it's not only, we think about the lawyers and the defendants and the plaintiffs, the parties, but you forget a lot of people show up in court because they're jurors or they're witnesses and all that stuff. And I'm going to bring a perspective of respecting everybody's time with that. Like, it's a whole different experience to have to close the doors to your business, potentially missing out on money and stuff. And that's something I'm going to bring to the bench that I don't see a lot of other people have. Like I said, as prosecutors, you get so obsessed with your trial stats and what you're chasing here, you forget you live in a bubble and you forget that outside world where you're impacting people's lives by issuing them subpoenas and summons and stuff. So I think I can set myself apart in that as an overall approach. If you're a regular voter who's sitting here going, who cares how many trials you have or motions or any of this stuff, that I'm the guy that's going to know that when you got a jury summons that's inconvenient, I'm going to try to manage your time as best as possible. We all know about jurors getting stuck in the room for 7 hours to only find out that you guys settled out the case and stuff. Like that's got to be infuriating. So I hope I'll bring that level of respect that regular people can say, this is a normal guy that I can level with. And this is somebody that's going to respect me just as much as he does the attorneys and stuff in the courtroom.
Okay,
I
well,
definitely like that.
I do. So thank you so much for joining me and Nina today and coming on particularly primarily for the benefit of the public, the voters, so that they could um become acquainted with you and your candidacy. A lot of times we know, you probably know this already, Joe, that people don't um know a lot about the judges. And unless
Mhm.
we do what everyone does through forums and organizations, and we have as many forums as possible so that the public can acquaint themselves with who they're going to vote for and make a decision on the ballot. If you wouldn't come on, that wouldn't be possible. So we want to thank you. And so, do you want to say any last words before we sign off?
No, just a reminder, like I said, the election is August 18th. We're the ones that are done on August 18th. Every time I talk to an individual, I pound that home that this isn't November. You're not waiting for the presidential. It's August 18th, and these local elections make a difference in your lives.
Okay, well, thanks for joining us again. Haiti Oropesa with Nina Hayden and Pasco County Judicial candidate Joe Justice. And we're going to jump back on in a couple of minutes because next up we have a Hillsborough County Judicial candidate, John Shafino, who's running for Circuit Court. Okay, good night, Joe. Have a great
Good
evening.
night.
Thanks for having me.
Nice talking
Yep.
to you.